Welcome to Unified Media Dropping Gems podcast. Let's get it.
Unified Media Dropping Gems podcast season 3 episode 6 revolves around the topic difference in generations, from upbringing, culture, expectations, standards, and experiences. Like and share this video to those who will find this information useful. Tune into the show once a week, every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, live on YouTube, where we have raw, uncut, open discussions that can range with insightful and educational information across the board. Other episodes will include past and current events, trending topics, conspiracies, personal journey, and so much more. We also invite special guests to shed light on who they are and what professional industry they are in. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, email droppinggemspodcasting@gmail.com with your name, business, industry, social media info, and brief bio. Hosted by yours truly, JR The Truth and Aki ONTL Dewan. Support the show by subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell.
Yes, sir.
Support the show by subscribing. We're going to open up with this quick video right here to set the tone, and then we're going to catch up with ONTL Dewan. Here's Millennials and Gen Z. Poorer than ever. Here's why.
For younger generations, the cost of living has increased so much that they have 86% less purchasing power than the baby boomers did when they were in their 20s. Now, baby boomers are defined as anyone born from the years 1946 to 1964. And for those boomers, they lived during a time where life was much cheaper, including houses, cars, and education. Yet we hear all the time that younger generations have a ton of flaws, like they're super lazy, or they spend all their money on avocado toast. And there's a constant debate of whether or not younger generations are weaker than the older ones. Well, I took a look at the data and I wanted to know if they were actually having a hard time financially, or was it just the fact that TikTok is rotting their brains and thus their ability to make money.
And you had the medium ice white muffin with 2 extra shots, 2 extra scoops of vanilla soft top and caramel drizzle, and extra sugar sprinkles. Yeah, that's me.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or in fact, the country, and that is home prices. Now, in 2022, when the average millennial turned 33 years old, the median home price in the United States was $433,100. Median household income was around $70,000 in 2022. That means if you took 100% of the median income in 2022 and put it towards a home, it would take you roughly 6.11 years of your wages to buy that house outright. Now, of course, that's actually unrealistic. No one's going to take 100% of their income and just go buy a house with it. However, it serves as a really good benchmark metric. Now we can compare how many years of wages previous generations took to buy a house outright compared to what their median income was. And now that's kind of an apples to apples comparison. Now, this benchmark metric is going to be called the home to price income ratio. The average baby boomer turned the age of 33 back in the year 1988. That was the first year that Nike came out with the slogan, "Just do it." The Ford Escort was the most popular car at the time. And Back to the Future 2, one of my favorite movies of all time, was still being filmed. The median home price back in 1988 was $110,000, and the median income of a boomer was just about $27,000. That means that their home to price income ratio was around 4. It would take 4 years of their median income in order to buy the median home at the time. In fact, some high earners back in the day were able to pay off their houses just with 1 or 2 years of wages. Now, historically, an average house in the US costs around 5 times the yearly household income. During the housing bubble of 2006 to 2008, it ballooned to a ratio of 7, as we can see here. But what's more startling now is that the home to price income ratio these days is well past that of the housing bubble levels. Now, if you thought a ratio of 7 was bad, let's actually look at the average house price to average income ratio in the United Kingdom. Our friends or lads or mates across the pond in the UK have been seeing ratios consistently over 7 for the past 10 years, and lately it's been over 9. So if you're British and watching this video, I'm sorry, you're kind of more screwed than the average US citizen is, but at least you have some tea. I'm drinking some tea right now, and hopefully that kind of gives you some solace. Now, what's even more interesting is if we plot home price.
Do you own your home in Oklahoma, but still rent your electricity? If you pay more than $70 a month,
price against the median household income. So this is a graph of median annual household income plotted against the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. That's the index that seeks to measure the price level of existing single-family homes. So we're comparing a percentage change between the two. You can see that the general trend here is that the household income in black is above the home price index in red from the years of 1955 all the way to about 2005-ish. The black line being above the red line is a good thing. It means home prices are at least somewhat manageable. When the housing market started to bubble up pre-2008, we can see that the red line crossed over and it subsequently went back down in 2010 when houses were cheaper after the crash. But these days, home prices have shot way above the median household income again, and that's definitely not good for the younger generation. The UK, by the way, even worse. I think oftentimes we see the news going on in America, and we think it's already been pretty bad, but if we just look at our English potatoes over there, we can see that they've been dealing with this for quite some time already. So if you thought that was bad, here's another graph of inflation versus the home prices from 1970 to 2023. You can see that the change in consumer price index here has been steadily going up linearly over time in the bottom darker blue line. And while home prices have been outpacing inflation since 1970, in the past decade, you can just see this vertical increase and it's basically ballooning like crazy. So this article, which actually pulls data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States, states that, quote, spending $100,000 on a home in 1990 would equate to spending about $377,000 on a home today. For everyday living costs, though, $100,000 back in 1990 on goods and services would require $231,000 to get the same amount of goods today. So while inflation is definitely present, home prices have outpaced inflation by a good margin now for quite some time. There are a couple of reasons for this, and they have to do with demographics. So first is that the boomers didn't face as much competition back in the day. There simply weren't that many people living in the United States in the 1970s and 1980s, and population growth has really exploded in the past 2 decades. So back in the day, houses weren't as much in demand, and so you didn't really see that much competition for them. Boomers were also likely to get married early, and thus they would have a multiple income household from an early age. That means they were able to afford houses than the current younger generations. I'm sure that you've heard that millennials, they've been staying home a lot longer, and so they're actually delaying marriage, and they're staying single a lot longer too. According to the Pew Research Center, more than 4 in 10 millennials do not live with a family on their own, around 45%. That means only 55% of millennials live with their own families. And as you can see in the previous generations, this number was closer to 69%. Nice. Or even 85% for these silent generations. Another huge reason why boomers were able to afford houses was the lower cost of education and the overall lower student loan debt balances that they experienced. It's no secret that tuition at 4-year institutions is absolutely insane these days. I mean, the average price of a private school tuition or even a public school tuition is somewhere in the $30,000 to $50,000 a year range. Student debt is now a $1.7 trillion crisis. And as we can see here, over the 30 years between 1991 and 2021, average tuition prices have more than doubled. In addition, the average loan balance at graduation has tripled since the 90s to $30,000 from $10,000. So around 7% of student loan borrowers are now more than $100,000 in debt. The funny thing is that a college degree these days is becoming less and less valuable, especially because you can start to pursue different avenues online to make money and entrepreneurship. Obviously, some of the degrees are still going to be useful, like, for example, if you have a specialization, so if you're specializing in law or perhaps medicine. And at the same time, more and more people are actually graduating with a college degree, which is pretty interesting because the number of graduating students has increased by 250% since 1970. Now, that means there's just going to be a ton more competition for jobs. It's pretty obvious if there's double or triple the amount of people graduating and the same number of jobs overall, then there you go. Entry-level jobs these days are no longer entry-level. They want you to apply with some experience, which doesn't make any sense. The average graduate starting salary is between $50,000 to $60,000 a year for a decent job, and many graduates will struggle to even get that number. So Gen Z and millennials are, I believe, starting off in a worse position compared to the older generations. They have more college student debt. They also have to deal with relatively lower wages, more expensive housing, and the cost of higher living as well. For example, with gas prices, Gen Z and millennials are paying nearly 40 to 60% more than baby boomers did in their 20s for gas. In fact, I think cars are a huge reason why Americans are behind the 8 ball these days. So I've made a couple of videos on my channel about this, but the average car payment these days is $716 a month, and the average loan term is around 69 months. That's the second 69 that we've referenced in this video. there must be something going on with this video here. But basically, we're seeing a huge amount of consumer debt being taken on overall, and with auto loan debt as well as credit card debt at all-time highs, it's no surprise things are not that affordable. So couple all of these factors together, plus social media, plus distraction from your devices, you can see that it's kind of a recipe for disaster. Of course, I think our modern society has progressed a lot in terms of social issues and racial issues, and I think the older generation will always think that they had it worse than the younger generation. It's just a common way of life. So if you're watching right now and you aspire to own a home or perhaps be even wealthier than the previous generations, what are some of these steps that we can take to get there? First things first, a lot of it has to do with spending as well as affordability. So according to a recent report, 73% of millennials are now living paycheck to paycheck, and 66% of Gen Zers live paycheck to paycheck as well. So here's the deal. If you're trying to rent a home, the general rule is that you should have a rent that is 30% of your gross income. This rule was initially recommended so that after you paid your rent, you still had money.
How do celebrities like Justin Bieber and The Rock generate hundreds of millions of dollars? It's actually
money left over for things like living expenses, healthcare, utilities, etc. That means if you make $50K a year, you should roughly aim to spend $1,250 on rent every single month. Now, that actually might not be possible in coastal cities like Seattle or Boston. If you are going to go over this 30% rule, you want to be cognizant of all of your other expenses because you kind of have less of a margin to work with. When it comes to buying a home and paying mortgage payments, the same 30% rule applies. If you can keep your mortgage payments, insurance, and taxes under 30% of your gross monthly income, then you're going to be in a really good spot. Now, in terms of automobiles and cars, if you're going to own, lease, or finance a car, you want to keep your monthly car payments to be less than 10% of your gross monthly income. Now, for many of us, this is going to be extremely hard, especially right now. Interest rates are super high on auto loans. And so if you're getting a new car, your auto loan interest rate is going to be somewhere between 8 and 13%, which means that you're going to spend a lot more money on your auto loan over the course of that time. There's never been a better time to just pay off your car fully if you can. And if you're able to do that and spend within your means on all the other parts of life, you're going to be in a really good spot as well. If you're able to lower your overall spending, you should be taking some of those savings, setting them aside, and actually investing regularly. The first step would be to contribute to a Roth IRA, which means that your earnings grow tax-free. It's an individual retirement account. As of this year, you can contribute $6,500 a year into this account, and a mere $250 a month in your Roth IRA compounded over 40 years at the average stock market return will yield you an ending balance of $904,000. If you can up that contribution to $400 a month, you can see that your future value will be over $1.44 million. And if you're able to max it out, you're looking at just shy of $2 million within 40 years. Now, another thing to consider is just increasing your income. And one of the best ways to do that is to hop jobs or look for different types of jobs. According to the Wall Street Journal, those that switch jobs are earning a lot more than those that stay. And oftentimes, a lot of these job switches will actually result in higher pay overall, sometimes 10, 20, or even up to 30% more compensation than if you had stayed at your original place. So this is pretty interesting. I have a lot of friends that live in Silicon Valley, are in the tech scene, and they do this all the time. They stay at a company for 1 to 2 years, then they switch companies. They might take on perhaps a lateral change, but even though it's a lateral change in terms of title, their salary goes up when they do that. They'll do that again and again and again. And basically you get the idea. They keep repeating this process. And within 10 years, they're usually a much higher position. They learn a lot more skills and they're compensated a lot better. Now, am I telling you to leave a job that you really enjoy just for the sake of money? Yes. No, I'm just messing with you. But if you are having trouble with some of your finances and you feel like you're not really growing at your job, that is definitely one avenue that you can explore. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the younger generation is actually screwed more than the older generations? I would love to hear your input. I'll leave
a lot to soak up there. And that's the first time I actually had to play the full video. And, you know, I watch it in real time with you. You know, I probably watch like a couple seconds behind the scenes. And if it resonates with me, I'm like, all right, this should be a good clip for us to open up the segment. But it just goes to show you, Aki, that how now millennials and the young generation, and let for the ones that are tuned in to not get confused, Gen Z is 11 to 27 years of age, millennials are 28 to 43 years of age, and Gen X is 44 to 59 years of age, and then obviously after that you have your boomers. But to see that Now it's tougher to own a home. You know what I mean? Inflation has hit. Resources are limited. Jobs are paying less. It's almost like ownership back then was a lot easier to attain. And then now that ownership, when you think about the compound interest that has grown throughout 20, 30, 40 years from your grandparents or great grandparents, if they left you something, now you have an egg nest, so to speak. You have something to pass down. But if you're doing that now as a millennial or as a Gen, what was it, Gen Z, it's going to be, a
Very difficult task.
Yeah, a very difficult task. How do you feel about that, knowing that that's our now reality?
Upsetting. I ain't even gonna lie to you. The feeling of it is upsetting. Thinking about that and how it is. I mean, in a way, it makes sense because, of course, as time progresses, things are supposed to get better, and in a way, things have. But that's why it became more competitive, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So for our generation and the millennial generation, we have a little bit more competition, because that time has progressed us and things have become a little bit more valuable, and people, you are allowed to put value on something. So a lot of times that we all may not agree with what has high value and what doesn't, but at the end of the day, somebody puts a value on something, so it makes it a little bit more, in a way, like, competitive wise. And I don't not like it, but I just feel like we were supposed to become better, and I don't know what happened in between that, when things were the way they were back in the baby boomers and Generation X. They had the ability to purchase houses and do more things, but like the dude said in the video, man, there became so many things that started distracting us, and they've put so many things in our way to make it really difficult for ownership, because it's like, with ownership becomes power.
Yep.
And now you can see why it became a little bit more difficult, is because when you start giving too much power out, or everybody has power to do certain things, then it gets more competitive. And that's pretty much where we're at, as far as on the millennials and Generation Z. We're at a place where everything is a competition, and it's all about who's going to do the necessary thing to be able to take ownership, or take and get in position to have that power. And again, I just, it makes me upset at the end of the day, because I'm not against competition, but I am against things that don't make any sense. And to me, it don't make any sense for it to be that difficult anymore.
And what I realized with my upbringing is that, because prior generations have been spoon-fed a certain narrative, right, in how you were supposed to structure out your life after high school, with the lack of information, the lack of knowledge, the lack of certain relationships, what's being spoon-fed from one generation to the next. It's almost like certain families, not all, but certain families, lean on government assistance, lean on, I'm going to work a job for 25, 30 years, retire with a pension. And sometimes that pension is not even enough for you to actually have a living for the rest of your life years that you have left for you, right? And then you come on to where we're at now as family men, right? And as adults, once you have the lack of that, and you feel like you are the black sheep of your family, that you want to break a generational curse, so to speak, it puts a pressure on you, and a stress on you, that makes you think about it almost on a daily basis. For me, every single day, Aki, is like, How can I figure out what tool is going to help me get to the next level to be able to provide my family something that they've never been provided before? You know what I'm saying? And then when you think about where we're at now, based on that video, that it's now even 10 times harder. Plus, none of our families behind us has set us up for any form of success, right? Certain families, I would just say.
Yep.
They don't quite understand our position. They don't even think about it. My mom doesn't think about it. My father doesn't think about it. I don't even think my grandparents even think about it, right?
Right.
And it's almost like there's something is missing there. Something is missing. And now that we're at the point where it's like, all right, we're willing to take on this responsibility now. What can we do to change those circumstances? I'm not going to let my circumstances be the root of, all right, this is it. I'm gonna just have to do what my parents did, or do what my grandparents did, and kind of follow their steps, so to speak, which is another form of manipulation, I think, that is structured out to us. I knew, Aki, that once I worked for somebody countless times these past years to create success for them on a clock in, clock out basis, and I'm exchanging my time for money that is not even making me or my family wealthy, essentially, I needed something else.
Right.
I needed to figure out something else, whether it was picking up books, whether it was consuming the right information down the rabbit hole, so to speak, like we always do. Things that may pique our interest, and find other ways to create those tools.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know there's a few things that Snoopy's here. I want to touch base with Snoopy real quick. She says the more people we get, the more things are going to get harder for younger generations. I want to raise my grandkid. If I was to raise my grandkids like we used to, I would be in jail. One thing is that this new generation is more open-minded, more laid back. This new generation also is more argumentative. Everything is questioned. You know the story of my mom, right? Remember, she set us up to get there, to break the curse. Yes, she did, Snoopy. You sure right. She did. But it's one of those things now, Aki, is where it's like, what can we do to break the mold?
And that's I feel like that is our biggest asset, being in millennials and Generation Z, that we have, is our ability to have multiple things to break it. You get what I mean? Like our parents, they were set, like you said earlier, our grandparents and our parents were set to a certain structure of, you have to go by this, you have to do this, you have to do this, because they were fed that narrative of, this is how you're going to be able to sustain life, right? And they never was really taken into consideration of inflation. Now, inflation probably don't sound well to them now. Now it makes sense to them now, but back then it wasn't somewhere.
It was foreign. It was a foreign language.
They couldn't even see it in, what I'm saying, with binoculars. They couldn't see it. And because I'm sure if inflation was spoke about and more easily understood back then, a lot of us in our millennials and Generation Z would have things set up already, and it wouldn't be hard for us to obtain or gather assets and things of that nature, because they would have already set themselves up and put those things aside right then and there back in those ages, and we would have been able to utilize and benefit from those things. And so I'm always like looking at it from that perspective, like, damn, imagine if my grandparents did. Like my grandmother and my grandfather told me they had the opportunity to invest in Las Vegas before it became what it was back in the 80s. And it was dollars. Like, you can invest with just dollars, bro. And I guess it didn't register to them of how big it would become, because imagine if they had invested their dollars back then in the late 70s and 80s. I mean, you know what I'm saying, like, really before Vegas really was booming to what it had got to in the 90s with all of the hotels and the Vegas strips and things like that. man, I
See,
would
but
have
the thing about that, Aki, is like I don't think it's just foresight and being a visionary
nah,
to be able to see something like that. I think it's a particular circle and pack that
yes,
understands it. That if your grandparents was in that circle, that in that structure, to say
yeah.
this is about to happen in Las Vegas in 20 years from now, jump in on it now.
Right.
They would have jumped in on it.
I'm telling you, I know for a fact, but also too, speaking to them when they told me these stories, and even my dad, they had people who had those visions and knew and understood that. I think, but
Mm,
because of that era, and specifically our demographic, it was foreign, but also too, it was also like one of those things where it became to them, they didn't trust it much. They didn't trust those visionaries
mm,
like that.
mm.
Like, they heard it, they thought about it, but it was also too like, y'all just trying to, it was always like, it's like a scam, how we get, how
Right.
nowadays, you know what I'm saying,
Y'all just trying to get my hard-earned money, and
right.
we gonna take this loss.
How can you guarantee me that this is
Right.
what you're saying is going to be, what I'm saying? So it was a trust thing. And if they really entrusted their intuition, and really dug into that, what I'm saying, it would have been like that. But you know I feel like it was designed this way, in just a way, because I mean, they always have that saying, when the rich get richer, the poor get poor. And a lot of
Mm,
times, the more you can have somebody stay poor, the more rich you can get.
man,
You get, and
that
and
hurts.
it does.
Stinks.
I mean, it's not funny to laugh at it, but it's just
Right.
like
It stinks.
how heavy that is if you really
Yeah.
think about it. You know what I'm saying? In order to get rich, somebody got to be poor.
Mm. So
And
it doesn't matter how you put it. The rich are gonna stay rich, and the poor are gonna stay poor,
because somebody has to be on top, and somebody
and
has to
somebody
be
has to
on
be on the
the
bottom in
bottom.
order for that to work.
Exactly. Because I mean, most of the time, if you look at it from a business perspective, if you don't have any people purchasing and buying your products and things like that, you don't become rich. And a lot of times,
Mm.
the way they have it set up is that most of the time it's poor people purchasing the products, because
You're
you're
the
appealing to,
consumer.
yeah, you're the consumer. You're consuming all of the things that you need, and the person who is on the top, who is the inventor or the creator, now
It's
is being
producing.
able to is producing all of the products. So it's one of those things, like somebody got to do it. You know what I'm saying? It's just, for me, I feel like I know, but there's going to be a time where we come to a point where it's not going to be. It doesn't matter. You can be poor, but you can still be rich, in a
Oh
sense.
yeah.
You know what I'm
Oh
saying? Where
yeah.
we'll have the gazillionaires up here, but you know what I'm saying, and the billionaires down here, because you still got a few nairs to get to before you get to a gazillion. But
Definitely.
even being a
Definitely.
billionaire, you're on the lower end of the rich scale versus the higher end, and it's going to always be like that. And you should always look to gaining and going upward anyway.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I feel
Absolutely.
like that's to me, that's what they're trying to do with the digital money, is make everybody millionaires, and then starting off where everybody, if you're poor, you're just a poor millionaire, if that makes sense, right?
Wow.
You get what I
Wow.
mean? So, and then the rich is all of the trillion and gazillionaires and things of that
Right.
nature. So, you know what I'm saying, they're on the higher scale, but the playing field still would be a little bit more better, because now everybody has the ability to put their chips on the table and get in. There's a starting point you can get in, like in the game of Monopoly, everybody starting off with 1,500. Boom,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? And you can get on the board. Now, how you utilize that 1,500, or how you spend it, is based on whether you're going to get to that billionaire status or trillionaire status, and so forth and so on, versus not attaining that level of riches. You know what I mean? So that's where I feel like for our generation, we have a broader perspective of how to get there, but because we're at this state, it's now more competitive. So it's all about who has the tenacity and the perseverance and the ability to be able to get there now, you know what I mean? And that makes it harder because now it's more like back then everybody obtained it. And I think that's kind of that it kind of makes sense why back then it was so easy.
We also got to think about this, Aki. Back then there was less expenses.
Right, but that's what I was getting to. That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
But think about it too. If back then they had less things to really worry about, right?
Yeah.
So it made it so being a owner or owning something and having something, it became a nonchalant thing. Like people didn't really care much because it wasn't enough competition because it was easily accessible.
Easier to attain.
Yes. And so now that it's harder to attain now, it makes you have to fight a little bit more, you know what I'm saying? You got to do a little bit more. You got to really put forth the effort. And then once you do that, then you have made your way to get it, which that's where it says, like, you know, the strongest will survive. The stronger you are, the more mentally stronger you are, the more mentally capable you are, the more you will, the easier it'll be for you to survive, because you're always you're always on the swivel and thinking ahead and doing these things like that, which it's unfortunate, but it's fortunate that it has to happen that way, because just imagine if we did all have the ability to purchase property, we would all only have to purchase property and purchase a house that we have to live in for the rest of our lives. And we wouldn't be able to purchase any other property. You get what I mean? Because then everybody else would be having a house to live in and having a place. So you wouldn't have tenants to rent out your house to, because everybody has that ability to own housing. You get what I mean? There wouldn't be a necessity for really having apartments, because now you have homes that everybody is able to have. So, you know, I'm not agreeing fully with it, but if you kind of look at it from this perspective, it's, yes, things were easier back then to obtain, but then because of the greed and you know, the need to obtain it, turned into, well, I can now profit more from this if I provided or built something where now people have to come and pay me and be this and consume what I want them to consume, versus being the owner. Because if we all had the ability to own something at that leisure back then, if we had that right now, nobody would have an apartment building. Everybody would have homes. You get what I mean? There wouldn't really be a necessity for apartments or it would be townhomes, but you know, people would still townhomes, I feel, would be little small community homes for families. You know what I'm saying? Like people, like you got your grandparents, your parents, your children, your grandchildren, and all of that living
which is now with the townhouses and those properties, which is all just relatively like real estate and rental properties.
Yes, now
for the ones that own them.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now imagine if everybody still had that. But you know, I feel like that had to happen, because after that baby booming era, you know what I mean, there became a lot more people in the United States, or even just all over. There became a lot, the population grew, and you know, and so how are we going to be able to get housing? How are we going to be able to house these new people that have already, you know what I'm saying, entered into the world and entered into the playing field? So that's kind of where that came into play, where, you know, all right, if I'm building I can build a complex, a duplex, or I can build these apartments
after purchasing the land.
Yep. After getting the land, now I have places to house these people, and then now all of a sudden now I can obtain more rich than that. Now I don't have to go back to my, you know, settling for a 9-to-5 and a pension. Now I have a pension plan plus additional income that is going to last for generations on top of my pension plan. You know what I mean?
How do you feel about, you know, those prior generations that you know, the great grandparents, the grandparents, the parents that say, you know, the Gen Zs and the millennials are or the Gen X, excuse me, the Gen X's and the millennials are lazy, you know? Or I would say the Gen X's are lazy. How do you feel?
Gen X's are our parents, Aki.
Oh,
Based off of what he said and calculated, the Gen X's are our parents.
Yeah, excuse me, Gen Z. I always get it confused. Gen Z,
millennials
Gen Z
and
millennials
are
the lazies. Are
yes.
lazy. Yeah.
It's tough to say because I don't feel like we're lazy. I just feel like because we have so many things to do, it's hard to figure it out. But we're not really lazy. We're more distracted than they were, bro. I don't feel we're lazy. I feel we're just more distracted and
which can turn to someone potentially being lazy.
Being lazy because there's so many things to have to try to focus in on and look at, and and try to gain a perspective on and figure out if this is the right move or not. You know what I mean? Back then, they didn't have too many things that they had to. They didn't have too many choices. Now we have a variety of choices. It can become overwhelming, which in turn will make someone become less, less productive in trying to find something because there's too much. You know what I mean? You're overwhelmed with it, so you don't know, and then it makes you fall back, step back, chill out a little bit, and kind of like, you know what, I don't know yet, you know what I mean? But let me figure it out. Let me see where my energy puts me. Let me see where I want to move towards to now. Let me see what more sparks my interest, as you would say, you know what I mean? Like what I want to do more. And millennials don't want 9-to-5 jobs, and you got to kind of agree with that, because if you look at it now, some of our grandparents and our parents, they had those jobs that had pensions, but them pensions is running out. So we're looking at it from that perspective, like, well, damn, if their pension is gonna run out, you know what I'm saying? What kind of
what am I gonna have to live for when I'm done retiring?
Right. You know what I'm saying? What am I going to be able to have? You know what I mean? And so it makes it tough. Again, I don't agree with the term lazy. I just feel like we have too much to consider, and it makes us more reluctant to make a choice.
Good point, Aki. Good point. Now, there's something that I seen on a podcast. And I wanted to bring it up. It was in the Diary of the CEO. Nice. And The Psychology of Money. I don't remember the author's name, but if you guys get the book, The Psychology of Money, he mentions a particular story, and I want everybody to take this. It doesn't really matter. This is what blew me away, Aki. It doesn't really matter what type of job you have. It's your spending habits. It doesn't matter what type of job you had. There was a janitor. Don't remember the guy's name in the particular podcast when he mentioned it, but there was a janitor that was able to retire with $8 million. And it was because not only did he save his money, not only did he, not overspend, he lived below his means, he saved, and he invested in the stock market. Which is I want you guys to whenever you have the opportunity, whenever you get paid, the first thing is pay yourself. And look into some index funds, look into a Roth IRA, and then once just how that video just mentioned, by the time 30, 40 years down the line, God willing you live that long, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, you could potentially retire a multi-millionaire. It's the slow game, but it's the game no less.
Hey, and that is a better perspective in using it, is how you spend your money, because at the end of the day, that's why I feel like we're not the lazy generation. Excuse me. But our parents never really gave us that opportunity, or our grandparents never really had that information to help bring the generations up abroad with the ability to properly spend money. And because now we're at a place where there are so many things to consume or spend your money on, it makes it harder for us to even look in that direction of investing.
Is
Right.
it safe to say this, Aki, that because there's so much out there that we consume to spend money, that shouldn't there be a counterintuitive where there's enough information to make money as well?
And that is true. And I believe we are at that. I believe we have enough information out here as to what you can invest your money in. So therefore it counterbalances with how you spending your money. You know what I mean? So we're at that stage now. But again, it's unfortunately we're at a place because it's so much. It's still a lot overwhelming to people to understand that and get that. And in certain places in life, you know, one thing is there's certain school sectors that don't teach you that don't help you with that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? If there was teaching methods other than you going on the social media, going on the internet, looking at all of these things, there's so much of that you know you can see it, you have the ability to obtain all of that information, but then it raises more questions like, how do you become secure in knowing that this information is solid and bulletproof, versus, you know what I'm saying, having so many people knowing that, hey, we have all of this information, invest, hey, I can take your money and flip it into this, I can help you get this
Right.
money into this, you
You
know what I'm
can't
saying?
decipher what's reputable, what's really good, what's legit.
And that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's tough because our era has now reached the place of we have a broad, you know what I'm saying, horizon of perspectives to consider versus our previous generations, our predecessors, who had a more narrow perspective on how to do things, you know what I mean? But and then again, because we have all of these things, communication to to those prior generations makes it a little bit more tougher too, because we have and can see answers that they potentially didn't have, but because of how much information we do have can confuse us, and then we don't listen to that generation prior who had a more narrow perspective, who can give more trusting vision, you know what I'm saying, with the information we do have now. And I always feel like as generations, we should all listen to each other, not just try to be the one or the other, you know. And unfortunately, you know, I've experienced this with my you know, previous generations, that a lot of them were more into, you know, having that power. Oh, I got this, you should listen to me because I'm older than you should listen to me because I'm older than you type, and not necessarily take into consideration, well, hey, I can listen to you, but you're trying to force me to do something that I potentially might not want to do, instead of giving me more guidance on what I can do and just giving me something to consider. You're trying to force me to do it exactly your way, and because it worked for you, you believe it can work for me, but because of my end purpose and result that I want, it may not work the same way. So therefore, you know, we should all learn how to really listen to each other in those regards. That's how I always feel, man. I don't feel like anybody is more knowledgeable than any other. I just feel like we all have perspective and have obtained information that can be utilized in different manners. If the older generation had our hustle and had a lot of our information that we have now, they probably would have they would have made nest eggs for us better than, you know what I'm saying, than what they had did prior, because they didn't have as much information back then. It was more sacred. You had to be around a certain group of people in order to know what to look forward to.
What's crazy, Aki, is that my family, if I can remember, at least 3 major times in our lives growing up, came across big money from either a lawsuit or some kind of such, and did nothing but spend it on like vacations. I'm talking about anywhere between $50,000 to like $200,000, Aki.
Wow.
At least 3 different times. My uncle came across one. My mom came across one. And I think my grandmother came across one as well. 50,000 to 200,000, you know, 3 different times.
And why do you think that they did that in particular? Like, why do you think coming across that amount?
Having the lack of knowledge of where to spend it. You know what I mean? Not knowing that you can take that and turn it into an investment, open up a business, purchase a property, rent it out, buy some land, build a home. It was the lack of not having that information and not knowing how to go about it. So when you don't know how to make money, how are you going to know how to spend it?
Thank you, man. Aki. and I was because Snoopy here, she said no ambition, and my question is, like, how does someone know what to be ambitious about? You get what I mean? So that raises that question. How do you know what to be ambitious about? But like you said, having that lack of knowledge, or just understanding, or having the ability to gain and obtain some type of information to be able to, know where to put it at, makes it tough to. So you become more consuming than you become producing. You know what I mean?
I'll give you another one, Aki. Remember during the COVID crisis, some people had the opportunity to get PPP loans, right? And make.
I did. I didn't get it. I had the opportunity.
I missed it by a deadline. That the funds within the PPP, the Treasury, whoever was overseeing it ran out of funds for businesses, and I just missed it by a deadline for one of my businesses. And so my mom gets lucky again, and gets approved close to 6 figures that I hear. And we open up a food trucking business, and I help with the process of it to get it off the ground. I even considered marketing it to get that off the ground, shooting commercials, doing all kinds of things, running ads for them. I took on that responsibility. I even took on the responsibility of cooking and cleaning, and getting certain contracts at certain establishments. We were able to get on the military base. To say this, that and I know my mom's probably going to kill me for this because I have to be transparent. It's so important. Us having the potential to turn that food truck into an actual restaurant was there within 2 years of time of just being able to produce on that food truck. But instead, she let the demand of the success of the business go to crap because she no longer wanted to be in the kitchen to cook. And I'm like, I'm telling my mom, I'm like, Mom, we can figure this out. Even if we got to hire an extra helping hand to pay them, $12 an hour, $13 an hour to put this food together, why would you give up that easy? You know what I'm saying? And one thing led to another. Certain decisions were made that was outside of my control because it wasn't completely my business.
Of course.
I was just there as a family, as a family member to help get it off the ground. And then, one thing led to another. They didn't foresee damages to the food truck. They didn't foresee, expenses on buying food. They didn't foresee a couple different things. And then contracts were starting to slow up, that they were more in debt than they were from the producing end of building profit, that she decided to just give it up, and it was hard for her and her husband to make that final decision. But it goes to show you that when you have somebody who doesn't have the ambition or the determination or the discipline or just the knowledge, how easily you could take a 6-figure business and it just goes to shambles. You know what I mean? It goes to shambles.
But that's what I say about going back to our generation and the other generation really communicating with each other.
And if she would have gave me, Aki, an opportunity, and this is where I hope one day there comes more opportunities like that, because I told her still don't give up on it. You know what I mean? That there's a chance that they can still come across something through some investments, get some equity, and still open up a restaurant. I told her that if she would have taken more of my advice on which routes to take and how to go about this business structure, that they would still have that business today, if not the restaurant already open.
Right. Makes
Because
sense.
I was willing to take that initiative to study those things for the business.
Right. And that's where I feel like our generation and our predecessors can really, you know what I'm saying, we can really knock it out. Like it's going to be a lot harder, but it'll be a lot, it'll be more smoother for us and how we can do if our generations really combined and be
Come
better
together.
and
Come together.
because if
You
we
know,
did,
and I
I
think it's
mean,
an ego thing, Aki. For
It
me,
is.
I feel like it's an ego thing. It's like, but I'm the parent. Why am I listening to my kids?
and oh man, I always feel like that, you know. And I had to realize the one thing I love about my siblings was I had to I noticed in my upbringing as a child, that's what I was taught until I became old enough, even before I had children. Then I sat down and I looked at, because me and my siblings, we're in the same generation, but my babyest brother, my youngest brother, he's still on the edge of being in generation Z. You know what I'm saying? He's like right next to generation Z. So
Right.
he sees things from a different perspective. I mean, he had to tell me one day, like, hey bro, you know, you're good at giving advice, but you're not good at taking it and listening. And I had to go back and look at him like, damn, this is my little brother telling me this. But then I thought about it, like, out of many conversations I've had with different people and stuff like that, yeah, I'm right. And then I had to look at it like, I'm like that because I was raised like that when I was younger, and I thought that's what I had to be like. Well, I'm the big brother, you got to listen to me. But it ain't always like that, because a lot of times others can see what we can't see. And so if we did a lot more, if our generations did a lot more communicating better in not trying to outnumber or be more bossy or overpower and become, as what my dad would like to say, be the booger with the sugar, you know what I mean? Like we would have the generation, we wouldn't be lazy. We wouldn't be looked at as lazy. We will be looked, you know what I'm saying? We'll be looked at as more of ambitious in many of different ways. You get what I mean? Because now we'd have somebody who has a narrow view and then for us having a broader view, we have all of these considerations. Now it'll just help us obtain and go faster and get there in a much quicker way. But you know, sometimes you don't want to hear your parent or somebody else, somebody older than you, always tell you, hey, you better listen to me, because it's just like, well, damn, what about listening to me? You know what I'm saying? Or being upset because I've considered your thoughts on this, but this is what my purpose and goal is. And you know what I'm saying? And because I'm doing it this way that I feel is good, even considering what you're saying, but I'm not doing it just like you. Now you're upset because I'm not doing it just like you. Oh, if that was me, I would have done it like that. Well, I'm not you. I'm not doing it that way. I've considered what you said. I taken into account of what you said, but I see a different route based off of what you said and what I know. So I've combined the two and seen that this is the better route for me to go, because now I can see myself in this way versus how you can see it. And that's where I feel like it upsets me a little bit, because I have some of those issues within my own family. It's like, if you don't do it the way, or if I'm doing this a certain way and you make it seem like I'm not listening to you, and it's like, no, I've heard exactly what you said, and I've considered everything, and I've taken into account of what you said. It's just because of what I'm trying to do and where I see me going with this, I'm not going to do it exactly how you did it. I'm going to do it the way I see that can work for me, because what you did worked for you.
Correct.
Doesn't mean
it's going to work. It doesn't mean it's going to work for me.
It's not always work for me,
especially not in this era.
Right. And it was funny because I was coming up, I was always told, it's like, hey, you don't want to be in the hands of an angry God, because your whooping may not be as hard as my whooping was. You know what I'm saying? You might get it worse. And so it's saying the same thing. Hey, I had to go through it this way. You know what I mean? It may be a little tougher for you, but just look out for this X, Y, and Z. And then now it became more easy because now I'm looking out for what you went through, and you're telling me how to surpass the things you went through and how to get over here in a more quicker way. I don't have to go through that. You know what I'm saying? A wise man, listen, a wise person, it makes what makes them wise is because they can see what others didn't do or what others went through already and not go that same route. You get what I mean? So it makes me wiser not to go through the same thing you went through, but to go through my own because I'm doing it in a different manner with still your consideration and taking on what you have said. So now I understand I don't have to go it. You've given me more steps. Like it's like it's like starting at step 1, and you told me about what's going to happen on steps 3, 4, and 5. So I know as soon as after 2, I can jump straight to step 6 because I already know what's going to happen between 2, 3. You know what I'm saying? Between 3, 4, and 5 already.
Right.
I don't have to guess about those things. And you know, and that's why I'm saying is if everybody can really collectively come together and say, hey, look, this is how it was going on back in my day. I see y'all got X, Y, and Z now. You know, just be on the lookout for this and this and that, rather than say, hey, this is how it was back in my day. It's going to be harder for you, but you got to go through it. You got to go through this. You got to do it exactly how I do it because I succeeded. But it's like you didn't have as many options to your success that I have now to make it for my success. So how come is it that you're shunning minds or trying to make it seem as if I have it easier and you had it harder, when in reality I have it harder because you've already went through it already, which it should be easier for me. You know what I mean?
And on top of that, Aki, you got to also think about this perspective. And this can just come from a particular household, demographic, culture, whatever. But there's a lack of family, right, willing to give you something resourceful to take your vision to the next level. You know, they're not even, there are families right now that you know, think about Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos was given a loan from his father to get Amazon off the ground.
And look at and he paying his father back 5,000 to 15,000 times more.
What I'm saying? And probably a couple friends were probably involved in that as well. You know, because he made a couple sit downs with his friends to get the investment off the ground. But culturally, our where we come from, we don't do that for ourselves. It's almost like you're gonna have to figure out yourself, bro. Good luck. You know, even if they have it, you're still gonna have to figure it out yourself. And
man, Aki,
why do you think is it that, you know, that where's that mentality coming from? Man,
I have no clue. I think it's just I think it's just it's one of those things where they learned a certain way, and like the video said, that generation thinks they've had it the hardest way. So now it's like it's either my way,
like a tough love, like you're gonna have to figure it out. You think you got it tough. You ain't live what I lived through.
Right. And it's just like, but why would you even want me to have to do that? You know what I mean?
Right,
like, why would you want me to have to live through that? You shouldn't want me to have to live through that. If anything, you should be the person, hey, all right, I went through this, so you don't have to. That's the whole thing. And so if I know that you're pursuing something, I'm gonna be there right on the step of the way for you, and I'm gonna help you in any which way. And you know what I'm saying? Right. And with that, if you realize that people who when you initially give somebody their push to where they're going and not try to overdo what they're trying to do, but be a good guidance and a good
give them just enough. Give them just enough.
They're still going to have to hustle and get through it and go and put in their work, and 100%. You know what I mean, and they still going to have a hard time at the end of the day. Hard, you know what I'm saying? Just I put quotes on it because it's not really hard. It's just more work ethic, but they're still going to have to put in that time and that energy in order to get through it. But you are making it a little less more pressure as much, because they're still going to have that pressure, but it's not going to be a full-on pressure. It's going to be that pressure to like, hey, you got this and this up against you. You know, you can move this way, you can move that way. I'm gonna always be right here. And if you got questions, I'm gonna answer them. And then when you have that person, once they reach their success, then they're going to come back and repay you for the success, for them gaining that success.
Absolutely.
And then now you know what I'm saying, y'all become even more successful together.
Man,
I know it's hard, Aki, because I used to wonder that even when I was a little younger, like, man, how come I can't get this like this, or how come it's always like, it's like you want it to be hard. You want your children to have to go through that because you went through it, and it's like, well, why would you want them to go through that? Why would you want them to make it hard? Why would you want them to have to go through that hardest spot if you know you have the position, or you're in a position to make it just a little bit more,
easier,
a little bit easier. You should want them to be a little bit easier, not give it to them, but make them, you know what I'm saying?
Even after you gain the success, you have to work twice as hard to maintain it.
Exactly. So you don't want to give them nothing, but you want to make sure that they get that understanding. It's a lesson at the end of the day. Hey, I ain't gonna give you the water, but I'm gonna teach you how to I'm gonna teach you how to, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna teach you how to fish it. And once I keep teaching you, you can teach somebody else.
I'll give you the bucket. I'll give you the bucket, but I'm gonna teach you how to fill it up.
That's it.
You know what I mean? And we all do it together.
That's it. You know what I mean? Like and that's always, it's always most people always need just that little push. It's not even a lot. It's just a little push. And a little push can look like a lot of different things, whether you're buying them their first thing that they need to start their business, whether you're just investing half of what the business needs. So you give them half, they put up the other half, and now you're getting them started. Like, it's always just that one little push to start, and then boom, now the car is rolling. You know what I mean? And that's all it's needed, man. I remember when I was younger, my dad, he bought me a car. I had a car myself, but it wasn't really that, it wasn't no resourceful. So what happened was, he purchased it and he gave it to me, and it was like, wow, but I didn't realize how much it was under when he did that for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was pressed to have to do it what he wanted me to do with it, because that's why he gave it to me, to move around and move and do those things. And then when I went wrong, or something happened where I got an accident and messed it up, to pay him back for that. So it's still like I purchased the car my own. It wasn't like he gave it to me just to, you know what I'm saying, to really do my own thing with it. I still had to. I never understood that, bro. I was just like, wow, that didn't help me.
I'll put it to you like this, Aki, and we'll go into halftime and come right back for the last half hour. Right now, I own a home. My goal is to pay off the house, to then leave it to my son, who's going to be in college. And then once he gets out of college, he has a home to live in. But I'm still going to charge him rent so he can learn the responsibility of what that looks like. Now, it's not going to be the same amount, or whatever the case may be, but now the house is fully paid. He doesn't have to worry about dealing with that extra responsibility. You know what I'm saying? But I still set him up for something to have and own himself, and pass down the line if he decides to have children. You know what I'm saying? Just that my parents ain't do that.
You know what I mean? Mine ready to disown me. Not following in the same footsteps or doing the same thing.
And they won't quite understand it until the explosion happens. And when the explosion happens, they're there to cheer you on and be like, man, almost like to say, damn, I didn't really think he could do it, but then again, I knew he could do it. You know what I mean? It's like very conflicting on how parents can be. But we're gonna take a quick halftime, and we're gonna go into this particular TED Talk. We'll be back after the halftime to finish the next half hour of this segment. This is how generational stereotypes hold us back. Check out this TED Talk.
First off, if you haven't made money with AI yet, don't worry. AI is the biggest wealth building opportunity in U.S. history. I'm James Altucher. If you don't already know me,
Are you having trouble trying to keep up with your professor? You've got to try Otter. Here's and
And if you guys want to see the rest of that, that's how generational stereotypes hold us back. And she's pertaining that to the work environment, on how people have made the assumption that generational types are different at the workplace, when we're actually more so very much alike. It's when we step out of work when our values are much different, you know. But in the workplace, we're more alike than anything. You know what I mean?
I like that little TED talk that she did. It made sense.
Definitely.
And like you said, it sounds more of when we step out of work, that's really the difference versus in work. But you know, I agree with her when she's saying that when it came down to the conversation at work, it's about the generations now. And because I hear a lot of that. I hear a lot of generational talk between work and certain, because I work with people who are of different generations, and I can see that that matters a lot to a lot of people, and to me it doesn't. I look at everybody as where everybody's just trying to find a way to make a living and be happy and do feel important when it comes down to the work that they do. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, that's really what it is. Like you said, I think everybody just wants to feel important or do something that's important and feel like what they're doing, and it's impactful at the end of the day. And it's hard to find that, or in some places where you work at, that's hard to be a thing, because everybody also too wants to be the boss. Everybody wants everybody to listen to them. Some people are born leaders, some people are born followers. You have to know which role you stand at. And that's not to say that a follower cannot be a leader or a leader cannot be a follower. It is just to say that when you know who you are as a leader, you understand who is a follower. And when you understand you're a follower, you understand it's easier for you to go with the person who you feel comfortable knowing that can lead. You get what I mean? And so that makes it hard. But when it comes down to all the generations, man, like I said before at the beginning, man, if we all learn how to really communicate with each other, we can change everything. Not just how she said with the millennials, we feel like we can change everything. I feel we have the ability to bridge the connection and the gaps between the generations because of where we stand at in this quote unquote generation thing. I feel we as millennials have that ability to bridge it, but I'm not saying we're better than any one of the generations prior to us or the ones after us.
And I also think that we should be more open-minded to receiving from whether it be the boomer or the Gen Z, just be able to have conversations with both and receive information from both that you could potentially apply yourself. Like I talk to my oldest son and I ask him, hey, what is popping on social media, like in your world, in your age group, so I can understand how they think and what they're consuming, because I may be able to apply it to my business. Right. And how I'm maneuvering, since I'm, ciphering through social media, trying to create an online presence, so to speak, for the brands we're trying to get off the ground. Because if you understand all age groups, then you understand your demographic, and then you understand who your audience is and what they're looking for.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You can sell to the right person instead of trying to sell to everybody.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Exactly. It's like, why would I want to give you something that you probably don't even need but then there's somebody out here who needs what I got, but they don't even know I got what they need.
Exactly. And why would I undermine my son's value of him being able to give me that information just because he's my son?
That don't make any sense, man.
That wouldn't make any sense. I'm not going to I want to be coachable. I want to learn from all generations, all generations included, because it'll benefit. It'll be a benefit for all of us.
Oh no, definitely, man. And my son, he's in the generation of just climbing and getting to heights. He pushes chairs around, man, and just to go stand and get something where he can't. You know what I'm saying? Like but it's funny because what he does is he watches how we operate and maneuver, and he wants to be at that level. He wants to get to that level. So in his mind, he figures out ways that he can do that. You know what I mean? He tried to get to that level and to that height. And I'm never mad at it. It's just, unfortunately, there's certain things he's going to learn the hard way. And then sometimes I have to step in and intervene, because if I don't, then, you know, it could be very detrimental to him.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? But you know, looking at that as a, you know what I'm saying, the Tyler, like we went over Shabbat the other night, man, and in there was a scripture in regards to giving counsel. Like, you have to really be able to, everybody is a counselor within themselves, and everybody else can counsel you. So, you know, I was speaking to my grandfather, which is in the baby boomers era. You know, I used to do a lot of work with him, bro. When I was younger, I used to go and work with him. He was a general contractor, and I would be working with him, and he would be feeding me so much stuff. So for me, when I got around a lot of my peers and people of my age, and they would hear me talk or just look at things in a perspective, they would be like, bro, bro, you sound like, you know what I'm saying? Like you sound like an old man, but like a wise man. Like they would be intrigued because I would have this young face, but I would sound older than what I am. And they wouldn't believe that. But I believe that that's where if we start listening to the generations and everybody listen to each other, boom. My grandfather was coming to me, like how we connected was he wanted to understand how to utilize the internet and computers, and how to save documents, how to create profiles and different things like that. So in return for me helping him with that, he was feeding me knowledge and everything about how they used to do things and what they would do, what hard work was, what, you know, being ambitious was, and what, you know, certain things that they did, and how to go out and get your things and do things on your own and certain things like that. So that's how we connected. I didn't shun what he was telling me, and he didn't knock what I was showing him. Worked together. You get what I mean? And that was some of the most fun times that I ever spent with my grandfather too, man, back in my early 20s, because you don't get that, you know what I'm saying? And I would learn things about how his parents were and his grandparents were, you know what I'm saying? And how they did certain things, and they really did go through some tough times, but I feel like we're not going through nearly as much toughness as they go. Like, they went through tough times because of segregation and stuff, but we are going through tough times because of the wanting to be segregated. Back then, they didn't have a necessary choice to do it. So it was either you was here or you was there. Here, everybody has a choice in our day and time. And a lot of people are choosing to be segregated. They're choosing to be separate instead of becoming organized and working together. Back then, you would only separate you were separated but organized at the same time. You was gathering together at the same time with your kind. Nowadays, people are still it's hard for people to still try to get that in their concept and things like that. What's good, 65 Rose? You know, welcome in, man. And, you know, and I really do appreciate, again, the fact that generation from back then, my grandfather's generation, my dad's generation, really did, you know what I'm saying, teach me some things. But I just wish that nowadays that those generations do take more heed to the younger generations, man, because the younger ones are definitely onto some things. And like you said, you listen to your son and what he looking for and things like that. it makes more sense. You know what I'm saying? Because now you get an understanding of the young ones, how they think and what they doing, and what ways you can help and assist them in reaching and obtaining their goals that they're trying to obtain.
Yeah, we work together to make it happen.
Mhm.
And that's how more families and friends alike should operate. You know what I mean? Because if somebody reaches a certain social status or business status, right? Because this is what I've noticed, especially on social media. You'll see the success, but nobody talks about how they got there. Essentially, you know, what relationships were formed, what deals were made,
Right.
what conversations were had.
Those is like secret. Those is like what they call it, G5 classified. You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, why? And if we're in a competitive era, and it's almost like they don't want to give you that because they don't want to be competitive. They don't want to seek another form of competition. They don't want us in that status to compete with them.
And that's what I don't get. It's the more competition you have, the more fun it becomes. Honestly speaking, the more competition you have, the more fun it becomes, because now
the economy grows.
It definitely does. It definitely does, man. Like when we do our dissertations, because I got a dissertation to get ready and do in the next week or so, when it comes down to the Feast of Harvest and getting to that stage. Like a lot of my peers and a lot of the stuff that we talk about and do, man, I don't necessarily be in full competition with them, but what I am is I'm competitive to make sure that when I go and do my part and speak on my level, that it inspires them to do better and be better and become more wittier and become more clever with the way they present. And they do that for me. Like when I'm listening to them, I'm be like, oh man, damn, I didn't even, man, you know what?
Catch that.
Yeah. And so now I want to get better at it. Now I want to be better at it. And I want to be, you know what I'm saying, make it a little bit more funner the way they did. You know what I mean? So I love that. And it's always friendly competition when it comes down to it, because we always trying to not outdo each other, but outdo the other part of ourselves, the prior to our, what we did prior to that. We're always trying to be better at what we did before. And because we all have done great and tremendous jobs at how we perform and present our information, man. So I feel like if you it makes it more competitive if you tell them, if you're giving me and telling me what to do and how to do that. Now that still doesn't make it easier for me. It just makes me more aware of what I got to do and how to be more creative in what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
100%. Amazing episode today,
man.
Episode 6, difference in generations. And one thing I want to head out with that I didn't get to mention was that I had a conversation with a Gen X, right? Somebody that was 50 plus years old. Mm-hmm. And when we were conversing back and forth, this happens to be my wife's mother's fiance, soon to be husband, right? He doesn't even understand the world that we live in when it comes to what we do. Doesn't even understand it. He's like, what do you know what I mean? I know you have your marketing business. I know you're, pursuing film, music, whatever the case may be. But what, I see you doing stuff on TikTok. Like, what is that about? So when I broke it down to him, his eyes like opened up, and it was like something that, he was kind of consuming it and registering it, and it was kind of like feeling it out. And the one thing he took from it and that he gave me, he was like, if it's working, double up on it. He didn't even, as somebody that comes from another generation, that could have gave me something totally different and could have said, you know what? It doesn't sound like that's quite the thing that's going to pan out for you. Why don't you do this instead? This worked out for me. I was a whatever. Instead, he decided to receive it and tell me, it sounds like that's going to work for you. Double up on it. You know what I'm saying? And just to get that from a whole totally different generation, when normally at their age, they would have been like, I don't think that's going to quite work out. You should go this route instead. you know, he gave me the keen advice to, hey, when you get back home, continue to do that.
That's
You know,
what's up right there.
and that's exactly what I did.
I mean, because that's how I feel, man. I always looked at I resonate with those people. Like, you know, I got told, you know, I I guess it's weird because I don't give people things to talk about, but it's just like at the same time, why would I give somebody something to talk about when the only thing that they doing is talking on a negative perspective or shutting down what I'm trying to do? You know what I'm saying? It's like, excuse me, at the end of the day, sometimes it's not always good to tell everybody every move that you're about to make, but
That
also
too.
just make the move. And then when they ask you, hey, what made you do that? Or how did you do that? Then you can give the, oh, this is what I had to do. And this is what I did, you know what I'm saying,
Right.
to make this move. Because at the same time, man, it's like, you know, that's good that he received that information and then gave you something to push you forward. Because then again, imagine if the conversation didn't go that way, and you know what I'm saying, you would have
I
took
probably would have came home second guessing everything and probably would have went ahead and try to do something else.
and that happens all the time, and that's what I really don't agree with and don't like, man. I don't, and for me personally, I learned that really at a in my earlier ages, man. I really learned that in my 20s. I never really told people what not to do. I just always told people, you know what I'm saying, whoever told me anything, I'm like, hey man, if that's what you're trying to do it. Just be on the lookout for X, Y, and Z, or whatever information I had, I would give
Right.
them. I never shun people on the stuff that they want to do or how they feel and what they see, because I can't control their life. I don't want them to do things. I got told many of different times before, man, I'm good at massage therapy. I'm good at doing this. I'm good at doing that. I should go and do this. I should go and do that. And I should go and do that. But nobody ever listened to what it was that I was trying to do. And
What your intuition, what your spirit is telling you.
yeah, and it all, and then for a long time it always discouraged me, because like you said, like you if you would have if he wouldn't have gave you that good feedback and told you to come home, you would have been trying to figure out to do something else, or you would have, you know, been doubting everything. And a lot of times I had got surrounded by a lot of doubt, and I got tired of it, man. I like really got tired of people trying to doubt me, and then me being doubtful because of what they said, because other generations or people that were older than me telling me that that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not how you're supposed to do it. That's not what, and it really,
It's almost like they want to reflect their weaknesses onto you.
yeah. And it's just like, bro, you don't even know me. You don't understand me. You don't even know how I'm thinking, what I'm considering, what I've already thought about. So a lot of times I don't want to tell you anything, and I'm not keeping anything from you. It's just I don't want to tell you stuff until until it's done, and I know it's done, and I'm happy with what is being done, and it's done the way I seen fit, and it's happening the way I like it. And if it's unfortunately it didn't work for you, well, hey, it didn't work for you. It was working for me. Obviously, you were supposed to set the bar so I can surpass the bar, so somebody else can surpass my bar. You get what I mean? Like, that's how it's supposed to be. You always supposed to raise the bar. You know what I mean? If we're
not pushing each other, if we're not pushing each other,
and what we not pushing each other, we lowering the bar. Now we playing limbo, and who likes to play limbo like that? You know what I'm saying? Who ready to break their back trying to get low?
we lower our standards when we do that.
Can't do it, man. Aki.
Can't
So
do
you
it,
know, this was, I knew this was going to be one of those good ones, because the information, the perspective, the different ideologies, the different ways that people see things when it comes down to how we were raised, what we were raised with, what we had, what opportunities were open to us in our different generations or gyrations, the ability to go forward. I knew it was going to be one of those things, because it really opens up you. If you're not an open-minded person and you're closed-minded, then you're never going to receive anything, and you can never go anywhere. But if you're always open-minded, you have many routes to go and many roads to take, and those roads can lead you to a lot of different places. With different people, man. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, definitely I appreciate this episode. This is
likewise, Aki.
Man, this was a good one right here. And thank you for those videos, because those videos really help put in more perspective to really bridge. Like I said, we have the ability to bridge a gap, but that it really bridges the generations together to become better, not worse, man. You know what I mean?
Definitely appreciate you, Aki. A lot of love and light to you and the family. This is Unified Media Dropping Gems, episode 6, The Difference in Generations. We'll be back for another episode next Sunday. All right, same time, same place. we'll let you know what that topic will be. Me and Aki always tap in to discuss behind the scenes what the next topic's going to be. But just know we're going to be dropping gems and we're going to be giving you some.
And just think about it and realize this: a lot of the topics that we come across with and we have on these shows are real life things that we go through. The topics don't necessarily, we don't have a set of topics that we already have pre-made. Topics comes as the situations around us gain.
And we don't even the conversations just as raw as it's going to be. Nothing's scripted. You get it in real time, real life, real effort. And make sure you guys go check out ONTL Entertainment Effort video out now. And Want to See Me from his little brother.
Man, you gotta check out the one, man. JR is the truth. He is the one. He will let you know, man. Everything.
We got a lot of work to do on that end too, Aki. Once we get back to our
oh, it's gonna get there, Aki. Don't worry. We got what, 4 more episodes, and then we'll be back.
4 more episodes, and then we'll take a break and back.
We'll be back with Truth Nation Center Stage. Y'all make sure if y'all tapped in and y'all seeing this, you got artists, people who do music, who do make beats, producers, everybody get ready to tap in, man. We got 4 more.
Summer's gonna be lit. Summer's gonna be lit. I appreciate you, Aki, man.
Yes, sir.
Have a good evening, and we'll definitely tap in early this week. Stay blessed, brother.
Bless.